Hi guys, my name is Stephanie and I am back with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this DIY custom matting for this picture here. This is going to be a quick and easy tutorial and it's going to save you a lot of money. When I priced out having that mat made online, it was going to cost me at least $100 to have that made. But I ended up making it for less than $10. Here's how. First, I headed over to Michael's to get one of their uncut mat boards. They're 24 by 36 and they only cost $9.99, so $10. This is a 4-ply mat board, so it is just like the matting that comes in any prints or artwork that you're buying. Hobby Lobby also has some of these mat boards in their stores, and I think they have a few more color options too. I made all of my cuts with a utility knife that had a fresh blade in it, but you can also use an X-Acto knife. That's probably even better for cutting paper like this. The first thing that a lot of you are going to have to do is cut the outside of the mat to the size of the frame that you're putting it in. My mat happens to be the exact same size as my frame, so I didn't need to cut any of the outside. Before cutting your mat board down to fit inside of your frame, I recommend using a pencil and a straight edge to perfectly mark exactly how you want to make those cuts before you do it. Don't just wing it on something like this because you'll have to go out and buy another $10 mat board if you make a mistake. For the outside of your mat board, you can cut that with scissors if you prefer, but make sure that they are very sharp and you are careful when you're making those cuts. Again, you don't want to mess anything up. To make my DIY custom matting, I used a ruler and a pencil to mark exactly where I wanted to make my cuts. You're going to have to decide for your artwork how much you want the mat board to overlay that art, and then do the math yourself to figure it out. I'm sorry, I can't help you with your math because it's not going to make sense for every piece of art. Once I had my markings on both sides of the mat board, I was ready to connect those marks. I used my 4-foot long level for this because I know it's a perfectly straight edge that I can use to make those marks. Find whatever you've got in your house that's going to be long enough and perfectly straight to make your marks for this matting because you want it to look good. Once I had all 4 sides marked and ready to cut, I moved to a place where I could make those cuts without damaging what's beneath it. So for me, that was my garage. I'm going to be using a clean piece of plywood to cut on. Some of you are going to need to cut directly onto a concrete floor, a tile floor. It needs to be hard, flat surface that can resist that blade without taking any damage. Cardboard is okay, but you might press into the cardboard. If it sinks far enough, you might crease your mat board. So just be really careful with whatever you pick. And again, make sure it's clean too. You don't want to get that mat board dirty while you're making your cuts. You want the side that's going to show to be down on the surface. So it is going to need to touch whatever surface you're putting it on. When I was making my cuts, I was very careful to make sure that I was not going over the outside of those lines. So I didn't want to go into the good part of the mat that I'm going to keep for my artwork. Start in the very corner of your lines that you've marked and move along that straight edge. Use that straight edge as a guide. Make sure you're holding it down nice and tight against the mat when you're making your cuts. Also, I think it's best to do a series of shallow cuts along that straight edge instead of trying to go for a super deep cut just in one go. Because I figured out when I was doing it that I was getting more tearing along the paper and having like sort of a jagged looking edge if I tried to go too deep too fast. So when I was doing nice clean, shallow cuts into that paper so that I'd have to make 3 or 4 passes to actually break all the way through, the cuts were nice and clean and the edges looked sharp. Take your time with this to make sure you're actually hitting the lines that you've marked and not going past them. After you've cut all 4 sides and removed the middle, if you do have a little bit of roughness or a little bit of jagged edges showing, I found that a super fine sandpaper, so 200 or above grit sandpaper, can lightly sand away that roughness. Then use a clean dust rag to remove all of that dust before you frame your artwork. You don't want a bunch of that dust residue left behind when you're framing your piece, or you're going to end up seeing that dust on whatever you're framing. So that was basically it for making my own custom matting for my artwork. So as you can see, here is my mat over my artwork. The corners aren't perfect. I could have went back and cut them again, but I am very happy with this result. You can't really notice that the corners aren't perfect unless you're really looking for it. It looks like a normal store-bought mat that I would have bought with this artwork. I'm loving that I only spent $10 on this. I'm loving that I saved $90. I hope this helped you guys figure out how to make your own DIY custom matting at home. As always, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I do try to answer them whenever I get a chance. Good luck, guys.